What does the game No, I'm Not a Human hide off camera and behind the scenes? In No, I'm Not a Human, you'll be living out an apocalyptic scenario where every knock could spell disaster, and so your wits are all you have to save you from certain doom. When all else fails, you can always start blasting though. In this 2D/3D hybrid game, there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and so today we're pulling the curtain back to see what's hidden from our usual view, like how this creepy dude's jump scare works off camera. We'll be breaking a ton of stuff too, so I hope you enjoyed today's look behind the scenes. Now, as usual, I like to do a recap of what we'll be covering so we're all refreshed on the game's events. Because the game follows a non-linear progression, I'll have to explain it in a different way. An alarming broadcast details the increasing threat the sun has on humanity, with each day growing hotter and more unsustainable. Even worse, dangerous creatures known as visitors began appearing from underground with the intention of hunting humanity. The player will have to answer the door each night, vetting the strangers who seek shelter in his home, and deciding whether or not they're a visitor. During the daylight hours, you can test the people you let in, discerning whether you made the right decision or not. The conditions outside grow worse with each passing day, and the impending threat never lightens, forcing the player to make tough decisions on who stays and who goes. We'll leave the recap there and begin breaking some stuff. So first, this game uses a mixture of both 3D and 2D assets to create the unique hybrid appearance seen during gameplay. With that said, the inside of the house is of course a fully 3D environment that we can walk around unhindered. For the moment, there's only this main hallway area that leads to the front door. Its corridor is full of decorations and other objects that make this house a home. This ranges from several doors leading to other rooms of the house, and a picture frame showing one cool cat. If we move the camera outside of this immediate house area, we'll see that this L-shaped hallway is all there currently is. As you might expect, none of the doorways lead anywhere at all. Each door leads to a specific room of the house when interacting with them, but not in the way that you think. Not even the doorway leading outside has anything behind it, meaning for the majority of gameplay, the player is simply floating in the void and walking around a practically empty box. The only area that extends beyond what we can typically see is this small stairwell underneath the main rug. This is a stairway that leads the player into the basement, but there's currently no such room populated in this level. We'll be exploring that a bit later on, but for now, I just wanted you to see how horrifically isolated this map truly is. Since there aren't any rooms out here, how exactly do these doors work? As soon as the player enters a room, the door opens up as a camera changes focal length. During this time, the room we're opening will appear a short distance from the door, only it's not what you might expect. Instead of fully rendered 3D spaces, these sections of the house are really just flat planes, with pixelated art of the room we're viewing. This transition happens so smoothly that it'd be hard to tell how this is pulled off from a typical viewing angle. And to see how this works from out of bounds is really neat. After you wake up, the news will update you on the current state of things in the area. And this is also done in an interesting way. The black screen and TV are actually a floating panel that blocks the player's screen, and the doorway to the bedroom never closes throughout this sequence. Sequences like these aren't always handled this way, and we'll see more of that a bit later on. When opening the kitchen the following morning, your neighbor will be sitting at the dinner table waiting to chat if you let him in the night prior. To see how this works a bit better, I messed with this spread a bit by stretching it out and moving it around. He is clearly not sitting at the table, and even worse, he's missing the bottom half of his body. After you start talking with him, his portrait and a box of text will appear directly in front of the player's usual viewing position, and this sprite is handled separately since the changes I made were no longer visible. After finishing the conversation, he snapped back to the position I moved him to earlier. Something else you'll notice is that the sprite, despite being several feet behind the kitchen, always appears on top when viewed from the front. The game essentially puts these objects on different layers relative to the player camera, and this is further illustrated when opening the fridge. The other assets are still loaded in behind it, but no matter what angle you view them from, the fridge will always appear in the front. Similar to the television on screen during the news segments, the radio on the stressor works in a similar way. Our hands are sprites that come to an end just off screen, and the instructions that detail its use are hidden directly below them and out of sight. You can even see this dark silhouette surrounding the sequence during its use, which is pretty neat. So the core mechanic this game uses is the peephole in the front door, and through it you'll view all the characters attempting to gain entry. You can only look outside at night, and so everything is covered in this blue filter. With the post-processing removed, we can see the world outside a lot more clearly, and the same goes for the characters outside. We unfortunately can't view anything outside from another angle, since the moment we look through the peephole, this outside outside area overlays the player's screen instead of populating inside like the other rooms in the house. We can, however, disassemble the scene to see that it's really multiple layers that will change as the days progress. The foreground and sky are separate sprites, and the character who appears at your door simply loads in above these other assets. Something else we can do when looking through the peephole is shrink the characters. By doing this, we can get a better look at the entirety of their sprite, which is especially helpful with characters who are just too tall to be seen entirely. It's no less spooky with these gritty, grim sprites though. After you've let someone into your home, you can test them during the daylight hours. And if you're not satisfied with the results, you can always resort to the trusty boomstick. This overlay is tied directly to the game's camera, and so by disconnecting the camera from the player, the shotgun will move around with it. It looks like we're in Doom now, and we must rip and tear until it is done. Instead of demons though, our enemy is this tiny floating man. Glorious, I think. As the nights move on, you'll be able to look out the windows and view some of the stuff going on around you. Similar to the peephole, we can't view this window scene from another angle, but we can mess around with the area outside a little bit. The neighbor's house is actually an asset on top of the rest of the scene, and we can turn off to find a burnt down version baked into this background. Later on, the house next door will catch fire and burn down in the night, and so by manipulating the scene, I managed to put the fire out. Unfortunately, the story would go unchanged, so just for good measure, I duplicated the house and gave him a second one just in case. At the very least, nobody can say I'm not neighborly. In the other window, I saw this terrifying silhouette standing there holding a soldier's noggin by his helmet strap. To get a better look at this character, I expanded the sprites by several times, and now we can see them a lot more clearly. This was by no means a good idea, and the nightmare fuel is running rather potent tonight. While trying to suss out visitors amongst the herd, one of the tests you can perform involves taking a picture of your guests. When viewing this from another angle, we can see that before we even take the picture, the photo already exists and is floating beneath the player's hand for the duration. This quick animation plays out, and then afterwards, the picture is moved into view as the dialogue continues. A handful of nights into my first playthrough, the sky was filled with this vibrant aurora. Similar to previous instances when viewing the windows, I was able to take this animated effect and shrink it down to view it entirely. It now looks like a bright, massive entity hovering in the sky. It's pretty cool looking, and a bit unsettling, if I'm honest. Now, I'm not sure what caused it, but while playing through the game, I saw a creepy face appear after using the Visitor Blaster 5000. I slowed the game's speed down to 1/100th of its regular speed, and in doing so, I found that this is the spooky specter I spotted. I'm not sure what causes this to happen after dispatching an NPC, but it's a lot easier to see when moving at this slow speed. Speaking of NPCs, one of the most iconic in the game is this creepy dude. He appears regularly to give you an existential crisis, and telling him that you're alone is just a terrible idea. If you do, he breaks down the door and kills you. But let's take a look at this sequence from another angle. If we tell him we're alone, the player leaves the peephole, and at the same time, a fully 3D model of this character will appear behind the closed door. He stays completely still as the door is bashed, eventually being thrown from its hinges as this model comes to life. This character then enters the house with his hand reaching out, stopping after reaching the player as you're sent back to the main menu. It's definitely cool being able to stop and see this character from a perspective we typically can't, and I'm not sure which version is scarier, 2D or 3D. Since we're talking about 3D models, I should mention the cat. This guy is always present in the game's files, and I'm assuming he becomes visible after allowing the cat inside when presented with the option. At the moment, he's just kind of laying down near the doorway, but after sleeping through the day, he was awake and sitting upright where I can now pet him. I don't know what he does for you game-wise, but he's welcome in this house regardless. I figured I could at least use his assistance as a guard cat, and so I expanded him to the gargantuan feline you see before you. Even though he's the size of the hallway now, I can still pet him as usual, and he's no less lovable. I'm not sure about you, but there's no way I'm causing trouble with this big fella on the prowl. Now, as for other things we can bring into the game out of sequence, there's this hatch beneath the rug in the center of the hallway. By re-enabling the interaction with the hatch, I was able to head downstairs and into the basement before the game wanted me to. Although it appears to be a completely different level altogether, the truth is we never left the original. I was able to bring the house and basement sections of the level into the game at the same time, and in doing so, you'll see that they exist directly on top of one another. To my understanding, these levels will never be loaded in at the same time during gameplay, and clearly the stairs don't actually connect to the basement below, but it's pretty cool seeing this from out of bounds. I learned that the basement had something attached to it during this time too, that being this huge winding cave system beyond the hole in the wall. I'm going to be honest, I have no idea how to enter this cave area during a regular playthrough, but that's never stopped me from breaking into areas before the game wants me there. By forcing myself through the wall and into this cave system, there were a couple of things that changed. For one, I was now able to sprint by pressing shift. The fact that this happens automatically is pretty interesting, as it means the game knows when the player is in the cave compared to the rest of the map. Not only can we run like the wind, but the player now has a light attached to their position, since this cave system is way darker than I'd first expected. On the right, there's a hole that leads to this dark room where a single man rests by a pit. You can see this character a lot better from up close, but he doesn't seem to have a whole lot going on. This character is simply known as Miner, and he's next to this giant pit where a single rope hangs down below. The pit comes to an end just out of sight, and there's a black barrier placed here to obscure our view of its true depth. By running through the cave, I was able to break through this area once again out of sequence. I immediately jumped into the hole, not thinking I'd be able to, and instantly appeared in what seems to be a lake of some kind. This huge water area is known in the game files as pre-death, and like its name, the character in front of us is Death. When zooming out, we can see exactly how vast this gamer bathwater is, stretching out way beyond where the player is typically able to explore. Above this area, we can also see these clouds, or rays of some kind, stretching upwards into the sky above. I was surprised to see this map honestly, since it's weirdly serene compared to the grim sights we typically see. The main entity in the center, who is presumably Death, is a giant shape-shifting mass that basically talks to the player for the duration of their stay. I'm having trouble finding ways to describe it, since it's really just a mass of clouds with some bright green lights inside, but it's always changing shape in this downward flowing motion. We're only here temporarily though, and after a short conversation, we're warped to yet another location. After a moment, Death sends you to this massive green landscape with white fencing leading to a house in the center. Once again, this was not what I was expecting when playing through this game initially, but this is calmly, grim. Zooming out shows just how massive this level is, with a huge mountainside stretching into the distance. The textures are also warped toward the center as well, which looks a bit strange when viewing this from afar. Despite the enormous landscape, the house in the center takes up very little space. I'm not sure if you've noticed yet, but this is actually the same location seen on the loneliness and isolation poster in the hallway. Despite looking complete from the outside, the inside of this house is unmodeled and unloaded inside, so I'm not sure what I'll be doing here for the rest of eternity. I was even able to break through the fence and begin wandering these vast fields without the limitation of the fence area, which was weirdly peaceful after a long week of fending off visitors and FEMA agents. We can explore as far as we want to, without any worry of invisible barriers or falling through the map, since the whole thing is solid and walkable ground. To make things even more comfortable, I put the original house right next to this giant floating island in the middle of the void. And so now the door to the kitchen leads to my vacation home in the mountains. No need to worry about solicitors now, including those pesky visitors. Also, I don't need to worry about the sun, since this mountainside resort sort of, doesn't have one. But with that, that's everything I found behind the scenes in No, I'm Not a Human. Thanks for watching, and cheers.